What's up? Welcome in. We are live this week with our edition of Pod Like a Champion, the blueandgold.com recruiting show. I'm Patrick Engel, joined as always by our recruiting insider at blueandgold.com, Mike Singer. And Mike, mock class, future casts, new offers. Oh my. I mean, Notre Dame just doesn't want to give you a week off, man.
Yeah, I had one of those in February. It was overrated. You don't need any weeks off. I'm sitting here texting like, "Hey guys, like Jadarian Price." I'm like talking to sources. On the phone. My wife was not too happy about it during my vacation, and yeah, so much for a dead period. It's been anything but dead. I mean, man, go to blueandgold.com, guys. The coverage there is just been crazy.
And as Mike mentioned, the latest thing that I'm sure some of you guys have seen, if you haven't, go check it out. It's Mike's mock class where he ran down position by position, putting a realistic, not shoot for the moon, not, hey, this is all their absolute worst case plan D targets, kind of a projection of what Notre Dame's 2022 class could look like. So, prompted by that, I thought we'd spend this episode in particular going position by position in the 2022 recruiting class. If you're watching us live, you guys can ask us questions and we will get to them. But mainly, I'm just going to set up Mike here to go each position, talk about where Notre Dame's at, who's already in the fold, some new future casts that he's put in recently, and kind of how he sees most of these positions playing out here. So, again, if you're watching us live on YouTube, if you have a question about a position, drop it in the chat when we're talking about that position. That's the best time for us to be able to answer it. But of course, if you drop us a super chat, we are easily bought, cheap dates. We'll answer it right then and there. So, Mike, you want to do this?
I guess. Let's do it. Let's knock it out.
All right. Well, before we start, we're going to make sure you guys are following us on Twitter. You can follow me at Patrick Engel _. That's ENGEL. And you can follow Mike at Rivals _Singer. If you're watching on YouTube later, but not live, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, or maybe if you are watching live, and hit that thumbs up button, hit that notification button. You see a lot more of our content that way. And of course, if you're listening on our podcast, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And if you'd be so kind, leave us a rating, leave us a review. And we don't say this enough. Tell your friends about us. If you like listening or like watching, we'll owe you forever. All right, Mike, let's do this. Why don't we start on the defensive line here, where Notre Dame has already 2 players committed, and you still look at it and think, there's a lot of targets out there left, or guys who Notre Dame likes and have a lot of interest in Notre Dame. Where do you see this kind of shaking out as far as remaining spots left and guys to know?
Yeah, so Notre Dame landed commitments from Tyson Ford and Aiden Gobira in January and February, respectively. Will there be a March defensive line commitment? Guys, we're starting here with the defensive side of the ball, and covering Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame defensive coordinator on the recruiting trail, has been so much fun, just bringing so much energy, just the high quantity of recruits that he's talking to, high quantity of times he's talking to them with very good quality in that contact as well. So Tyson Ford, a bigger defensive end, listed at 6'6", 250 pounds. Aiden Gobira, 6'6", 230. So I feel like Gobira is either a weak side or maybe you can play the strong side end. But, Notre Dame's telling him he's a Viper. I feel like he could be a strong side guy. Tyson Ford, Notre Dame's telling him he's going to be a strong side guy. He could, slide inside a 3-tech in some situations. But, for the most part, he's an edge guy. So, numbers are always subject to change, Patrick, but it seems like it's going to be 4 to 5 total. And you're going to get at least one more edge guy, and you're going to get one interior guy. So let's start at the interior. And for that 5th spot, best available, like there's just so many dominoes, that would need to fall before, to get to that spot to really break that down. But let's talk about some guys specifically here. I think Caleb Ardis is one Notre Dame fans really need to know. 4-star player from New York, dropping his top 7 on Thursday. Let's just say I would be stunned if Notre Dame does not make the cut there. Fighting Irish really in the mix here. Biggest competition to this point for Notre Dame in this recruitment, maybe Penn State, Rutgers, because they're close to home. Honestly, guys, I feel like this one's Notre Dame's to lose. It's certainly Notre Dame's to lose in Donovan Heinish's recruitment. Of course, the younger brother of Kurt Heinisch. Shout out to Groggy Grizzly if you're listening or watching this. We know you're a big fan. So we have a hard time seeing Donovan Heinisch not in Notre Dame's class. If he, or if Notre Dame wants him in there, see the offer list here. Bowling Green, Kent State, Notre Dame's, the first offer, the big one. I think Pittsburgh might be the biggest competition to this point. Toledo, UCF, also Virginia Tech on Donovan Heinisch's offer list. So, again, another guy that we'd feel Notre Dame's in the lead for. And Anthony Lucas. Here's a nugget for you folks. Had a Zoom call with the Notre Dame staff on Monday night. I believe it was just Mike Elston. Recently bumped from a 3-star to a 4-star. And, you look at his offer list. Alabama, FSU, Michigan, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, USC, list goes on and on. This would be a guy that, from what I'm told by sources on the Irish side of things, he is just so good that Notre Dame will have a spot for him. Like, he is someone that the Notre Dame staff absolutely covets. And a question we had from the YouTube chat here, having an issue popping on screen, from Christopher, says Cyrus Moss. So he's another big one for Notre Dame in that same kind of mold of Anthony Lucas, in terms of how much the Notre Dame staff is valuing him. It's a guy from Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman. I want to say he was originally listed by Rivals maybe this time last year as a safety. That just shows you his versatility. And it was like, okay, he's not going to play safety. He's maybe he'll play like outside linebacker. Well, outside linebacker means like 90 different things these days. So he's definitely, a weak side defensive end at the next level. And he would fit very well in Notre Dame's defense at the Viper position. Big competition. Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma's a big one. Texas, Notre Dame. Big offer list. USC, UCLA. Cyrus Moss is one of the most coveted prospects in the country. See the Rivals ranking for our YouTube audience, number 80 player in the country, number 2 weak side defensive end in the land. Moving along, DJ Westerlak, a 4-star player from Missouri, a guy that I feel like I'm close to putting in a future cast pick in for. Conversations with the Fighting Irish staff have been very good. Clemson recently offered, and are certainly in the mix there. Long list of offers: Oklahoma, Oregon, Missouri, Penn State. So you get the idea here. Big time player, right around 40 scholarship offers. Looking at the offer list now at blueandgold.com, I think you got to mention Teva Tafiti from Honolulu. Our recruiting writer at blueandgold.com. Mason Plummer has a future cast picking for Teva Tafiti to land at Notre Dame. I'm not quite there yet, just because, there's so many guys on the board. They can't take, 15 defensive linemen in this class. Someone's going to get left out. I'm not sure. I'm not saying Teva Tafiti is going to get left out. It's just hard for me to project at this point. Alex Bauman's worth a mention, younger brother of Notre Dame tight end Kevin Bauman. It kind of same feeling with Heinisch. If Notre Dame wants Alex Bauman in the class, you'd have a hard time seeing that not happening. David Bailey from Modern Day is a name to know. There's another name. Ernest Cooper's a big one for Notre Dame. Should be seeing him in a couple weeks in Dallas. Staff is all over him. A name Notre Dame fans probably aren't too familiar with at this point. He's not a big social media guy, but offer list speaks for itself. He's a big time player And again, one that Notre Dame's coveting and offered probably around this time last year, I want to say. And contact's really ramped up ever since Marcus Freeman came on the job. So that's about it, unless I'm really forgetting some names. Notre Dame is tried with Caden Curry from Greenwood. In state, Danny Dennis Sutton for Maryland. Notre Dame's tried there. Don't see that one happening though, but both would be fantastic gets for the Fighting Irish staff. Just scrolling through again the offer list here at Rivals. I think that's probably cover. I mean, there's more names here, but those are the main ones to kind of talk about here.
All right. Well, we got some. Let's give the people what they really want here. We got some questions from the audience here. Calson22. Hopefully, I said that right. Would Notre Dame take Westerlak? DJ Westerlak, that is, and Cyrus Moss? Is there room for both? Great problem to have. Yes, it is. Mike, what say you?
Yes, I do think Notre Dame would take both, and I feel like we've talked about this in our past few Pod Like a Champions, Patrick. It's like we don't really like doing the speculation and looking at 7 dominoes from now. Like, let's just kind of worry about what we have right in front of us first. But this one, I feel like, yeah, they would. Notre Dame staff, is really high on both guys, and Cyrus Moss, I feel like, is a guy that Notre Dame will make that. They would really make that work. Westerlak, I'm sure Steph feels very strongly, and maybe the same way with him as well. But again, I feel like Notre Dame's gonna take one more interior player, one more defensive end, and then if there's a 5th guy, it's one of those like just too good to turn down kind of players. At least that's my read on the situation.
Yeah, they're not turning down Cyrus Moss if he wants to get in the class. But Bob Walker asks, Ardis or Lucas, if you had to take only one, who do you choose? Mike, who do you choose?
Caleb
I can see the stress on that question.
I don't like stuff like this. Bob, this is not the kind of answer you want. But I'm going to go with Caleb Ardis just because I love interviewing him so much. He is just one of my favorite interviews. The energy with this kid is just outstanding. They're both really good football players, so I'll let someone else decide that as terms of football talent. But for the interview, Caleb Ardis, you guys will see in an upcoming video here at blueandgold.com, our YouTube channel. He's just got a great personality, but I think that's it for defensive line. For folks just tuning in here, we're going position by position. We'll move to linebackers next. So keep your questions in line with the position we're talking about for our live audience here. And like Patrick said earlier, we're easily bought. So if you have anything else, just drop us a super chat. We'll take that.
Speaking of linebackers, your most recent Futurecast, I think, or yep. They all blend together at this point. Either way, it was Monday. Put in a Futurecast at linebacker. Why don't we start there, and then I'll let you kind of further expand on the linebacker board and what could be a pretty big linebacker class and a pretty highly regarded one if you look at the rankings of possible and realistic targets.
Yeah, I know you're excited about the linebacker class that I put together in my mock class on Monday morning. You can find that article. Actually, it was Monday afternoon. It took me a while to put it together. You find that at blueandgold.com. But the latest Futurecast pick in, drum roll, folks, Joshua Burnham from Traverse City in Michigan. See the Futurecast picks here, guys. They were all Michigan. All these Michigan Futurecast picks here. But received some intel that Notre Dame is, let's just say, trending in a good direction there. I don't think, at least to the last thing that I had heard in talking to sources, he hasn't given like a silent, wink, wink, I'm coming kind of deal. But conversations have been really good with Notre Dame. And if this one does happen for Notre Dame, like if they're able to land Joshua Burnham, Michigan's not going to go down without a fight. But if this happens for the Irish, Notre Dame fans, you need to give a round of applause to Nick Lazinski. That is the guy that really made this one possible, in my opinion. Said this before, Clark Lee was not a big day-to-day recruiter. Like, he's a bit of a 180 with Marcus Freeman. Like, Marcus Freeman's all the energy and day-to-day. Lee was a great recruiter too, but he delegated a lot of the day-to-day to Nick Lazinski, and he served a little bit more as the closer and was very good on those kind of calls too. So Lazinski was that constant from Lee. And Lee and Burnham built a good connection too. But Lazinski was that constant from Lee to Freeman. And Lazinski's connection with Burnham's really strong. So 4-star player, his film, Patrick, if you pop on his junior tape of Huddle, 31 minutes long. Like, if a kid has like a 8-minute long Huddle, I'm like, dude, okay, cut that in half. 31 minutes. He's playing quarterback, receiver, linebacker. He comes off the edge. This would be a really big time get, Patrick.
Yes, although I do have to say, Traverse City. It's Traverse City. There you go.
On.
Just so you don't have the entirety of Northern Michigan breathing down your neck if he commits to Notre Dame and you do a commit video or something.
Traverse.
Save you the trouble right now. Traverse City, yes.
Well,
real pretty place if you ever go.
They'll be upset with me. All right.
Not if you go pay him a visit.
No one say anything. Don't tell any folks there. All right.
So move on, or we got any questions?
No.
Here?
Yeah, we have plenty more linebackers to talk about. Should we talk about CJ Hicks? 5-star, number 1 outside linebacker in the country. Ohio State commit. Look, I'll throw this up here for the sake of Marcus Freeman and Hicks have a really close relationship going back, probably a year or so. If something were to happen at Ohio State, or I don't know, I think that's probably about it. I don't know what the other situation, because Hicks is very solid with the Buckeyes. He's recruiting for Ohio State. Like, Ohio State's 2022 class is very vocal on Twitter, and they do a good job there. So it's hard for me to see this one happening for Notre Dame. But again, if something were to happen, Notre Dame would take him. He's a no-brainer take. Not sure of the day-to-day contact between Notre Dame and Hicks, but you keep that one warm, just like Notre Dame. Maybe not just like, it's sort of similar. Like Notre Dame kept Caleb Johnson warm, offensive lineman from actually from Fort Wayne, but based in Florida, committed to Auburn, and Notre Dame just kind of kept it warm, and then really pushed later in that recruitment. Maybe that's something that Notre Dame could do here. So Notre Dame has Nolan Ziegler committed, 4-star, recently bumped to 4-star. He's kind of a strong safety linebacker hybrid, fits the Rover real well. So there's one linebacker. Have a future cast pick in for Notre Dame to land Sebastian Cheeks, 6'2", 210 pounds, right around 25 scholarship offers. And this is a dude, Chicago is playing high school football. I believe their first games in a couple weeks, and he is going to be a baller. I mean, this is a young man who I think played 4 games as a sophomore. All these coaches still were able to identify him and fell in love with him and offered. He's got a long scholarship offer list. And that, again, just 4 games as a sophomore, no junior fall season. Illinois didn't play football, so expecting big things from him. And we have a question in the comments from Gabe. Is there any reason Cheeks has not committed other than not being able to visit? The biggest thing that that Sebastian Cheeks has said, Gabe, is that he wants to play his junior season before making a commitment. Like, he wants to go out there and prove that he's worth these scholarship offers. And a lot of times kids say that. I'm like, yeah, okay, well, let's see once schools, actually start to push for you. which Notre Dame has done. He stayed true to that, and he's good enough to where Notre Dame's like, all right, yeah, we'll continue to recruit you and wait for when you're ready. So you can certainly respect that from Sebastian Cheeks. Moving along here, Nwafe Jr. Tui Halamaka crushed that pronunciation, might I add. Nation's top inside linebacker per Rivals. Another big one recently put the Fighting Irish in his top 5. I would even say that there's more specific top 3 in this recruitment, probably Texas, Notre Dame, Stanford, really fighting for his signature come National Signing Day. USC was an interesting omission from his top 5. That's the school that he was formerly committed to. So got a FutureCast pick in for him. So you got Ziegler, FutureCast, Cheeks, FutureCast, Burnham, FutureCast, Nwafe Tui Halamaka, FutureCast. Could there be any others? Maybe. I think one that you certainly got to keep an eye on potentially for Notre Dame would be Devin Jackson, the 4-star, who recently put Notre Dame in his top 5. And you can find that interview at our blueandgold.com YouTube page. He is another fantastic interview, and it was a lot of fun to talk to. An interesting omission from his top group is Nebraska, local school. He did not include the Cornhuskers there. Scrolling through, I think that's probably about it for notable linebacker names. Kip Lewis, 4-star from Texas, potentially. Robbie Snelling from Nevada. Lander Barton from Utah. These are all 4-stars too. Also, worth mentioning, Langston Patterson from Tennessee's brother plays for Clemson. And Langston was at the Notre Dame Clemson game in South Bend and really had a great time there. So the linebacker board, goodness gracious. How excited, but let's just say the 3 I have FutureCast picks in, and then Ziegler. That quartet, Patrick, how would you feel about that?
I would think that's pretty impressive, and all you recruiting nuts out there would have to be pretty pleased with that, especially with the potential of, somebody else wants in and they don't want to tell them no. It seems like that's a possible situation, a plausible situation. Yeah, you would have to feel pretty good about that. As far as, that's, I can't remember off the top of my head if all those guys are in the Rivals 250 or not, but still, how many times does anybody sign for 4-star linebackers in a class?
Right. Yeah. So Burnham's in the 250, Cheeks and Tui Halamaka. Ziegler's just outside of it right now, but yeah, that'd be big time. All right. Moving along.
All right.
I'm
very
I'm
busy
content.
linebacker haul. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to defensive back, where you also put in 2 new FutureCasts. I believe it was yesterday and Monday. So again, we start there. Who did you put in a FutureCast for Notre Dame to land?
Yeah, let's get right into it. Nikai Martinez, a 4-star from Florida, who actually just shot me a text message. Needed to check that real quick. Just about family, folks. Nothing, hold your horses. Nothing yet. But I do like where Notre Dame's at in this recruitment. Like you said, Patrick put in the Rivals FutureCast pick. Currently the only one on the Rivals Network to do so. His unofficial top group has pretty much been Clemson, Florida, and Notre Dame for probably since Notre Dame offered back in September of 2020. We talk all the time about these kids can't visit campus and all this. Well, November 2019, that was a while ago, but there were so many recruits in this 2022 class who were able to visit then, and it's just paying dividends. Like that Notre Dame just kind of got, something you could have never predicted would have happened with the pandemic. And Nikai Martinez, had a 2-day visit for the Virginia Tech game, visited that Saturday, and then, toured the campus again on Sunday. And turns out, what would that be, like 9 months later, 10 months later, Notre Dame offered him a scholarship. And he's a top of the board guy. I like Notre Dame in the recruitment. Again, he's been on campus. He's met most of the coaches. Of course, Freeman and Mickens have since been added post-visit, but connection's great with the staff. I'm liking Notre Dame here. I think Mickens and Freeman have done a really nice job and feel comfortable putting in the future cast. And then the other guy I put a future cast pick in for was Jaden Gould. This was actually Notre Dame's very first scholarship offer in the 22 class. I think it was like January of 2019 or something. He's also been on campus before. I believe it was July of 2019. Notre Dame's contact here fell off, but it's really, really picked up since Marcus Freeman came on board. He identified him and said, this is a guy I really want to go after. Seems like a Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame battle. Got the future cast pick. And this is another guy like Burnham, considered a Michigan lean, but I like Notre Dame right here for Jaden Gould. So those are the current future cast pick in for me at DB. In terms of some other names to know, Toriano Pride, someone that the Notre Dame staff has had plenty of contact with, but from interviews he's done with rivals, other rivals guys, he just doesn't mention Notre Dame. So I'll take that as a message that Notre Dame not so much in the mix. Man, we could spend a lot of time on DBs. Patrick, there are a lot. Kamari Rogers, this is one of the most elite corners in the country, ranked as the number 47 overall player in the country. Notre Dame's working hard on this one. Might have an article on him soon at bloominggold.com that Irish fans will want to check out. Earl Little, long shot, but Notre Dame has had contact with him from South Florida. Keenan Nelson Jr. is probably Penn State, but Notre Dame's had contact with him. Jair Brown is a big one. Ohio State commit, who Notre Dame is working on a good bit. Constant communication. Probably going to be hard to pull away from Ohio State. Lives in Westchester, Ohio, but this is a kid who's actually from Louisiana, so he's not, a born and bred Ohio State kid. So, connection with Marcus Freeman, obviously there as well. That one's very strong. Terence Brooks, that's a big one. Cornerback or safety prospect. Ephesians Prysock is a 4-star corner from California. Big one, 6'3", 170. Corner or safety. Got to mention Bobby Taylor real quick. Committed to Texas A&M. I think Notre Dame fans were kind of like, all right, when Marcus Freeman comes in, can we get back in the mix for Bobby Taylor? That one did not work out for the Irish. Moving along. Again, we're just kind of going to go through these quick because we could probably spend a 2-hour podcast just talking about defensive back recruits. Jaden Mickey, 4-star from California. Notre Dame's having plenty of contact with him. He's a recent offer and a good story as well, kind of how his offer came about in these virtual periods. Make sure to tune in to blueandgold.com this week for that story. Jaden Bellamy, teammate of Jaden Gould at Bergen Catholic in New Jersey. Devin Moore, 6'2", 180 pounder from Florida, another corner safety hybrid guy. The list just goes on and on. Xavier Nwankpa is a big one from Iowa. Now we're just getting into safeties per Rivals. This is a Rivals 100 guy, number 8 safety in the country, top player in Iowa. That is a big one. Probably an Ohio State lean, but Notre Dame's working there. I mean, this is we're recording this live, folks. So I mean, just looking at them, like, how much time do we want to spend? We can't cut and edit this, afterwards if we go too long. I mean, for YouTube audience, you see the offer list here. Miles Rouser, I could see at Notre Dame. Sherrod Coville, I could see at Notre Dame. Emery Floyd is a Georgia safety who Notre Dame just recently offered. Irish are right in the mix there. Jaden Mangum, I want to touch on probably. We'll touch on, we'll touch on 3 more guys real quick before we get out of here on the DBs, and then I need to catch my breath. Jaden Mangum, Notre Dame just offered him, I believe it was on Sunday. I covered his older brother, Jaron, a running back big time player as well. He had about 50 offers, so we'll see if Jaden can match him. I used to cover the Colorado Buffs for Rivals, so I knew Jaron Mangum very well. Now covering Jaden, this is another kid with just like a big personality, and just someone that Notre Dame fans will really get to enjoy knowing, if that one trends Notre Dame's way. Jake Pope is another big safety target for Notre Dame. Got to see him last fall in a game, and big time player, Alabama, Georgia, some of the schools involved there. Another big safety named KJ Winston. Notre Dame's working on this one from DeMatha Catholic, a school that should be very Notre Dame friendly on the football front, but Irish just I don't know the last time Notre Dame got a football player from there. But I would have to defer to Loose Emoji on that. So Patrick, yeah, like I said, we could spend a lot more time. There's other names, but that's just gonna have to do it for now.
Well, not quite. Maybe defensive backs go into this. We got a super chat and a question from Brandon Plenser. Before we answer the question, cue it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There we go. That's the stuff. Okay. Well, Brandon asks, to close the gap in recruiting, should Notre Dame invest in a custom cleat maker like Alabama, as described by Jake Taylor in his top 3 breakdown? What do you think, Mike? Interesting question here.
Brandon, I'm sorry, man. This is something I've honestly never even thought about. I got too much crap to think about. That has never crossed my mind. I didn't know that. Do schools do custom cleat? I have no idea. I know that sneakers and cleats are a big deal to the kids. I wear shoes from 6 years ago and Crocs. I actually don't wear Crocs, but I kind of want a pair of Crocs now. I think they're kind of back in. So, Brandon, I'm sorry. So I'm just gonna pop on another question from Brandon. Says, what's so special about Winston? Why is he in your mock draft? Not a mock draft, it's a mock class, Brandon. But what's special about KJ Winston? Again, the 6'2", 190-pounder from DeMatha Catholic. Look, Notre Dame fans, like you see a 3-star, it's like, okay, like I don't want to get into this whole 3-star discussion. I feel like I do that every single day of the week. But you got to remember, this kid did not have a fall junior season. Like, Maryland didn't play. So he's still picking up offers. His last 3 are West Virginia, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. He's still picking up offers from sophomore tape. And that's for a lot of these kids. Notre Dame, the profile fit is there. He's a talented, rangy kid. Could play a receiver if defensive back doesn't work out. So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that he is, would be some elite get for Notre Dame, because I just don't know that right now. But the Notre Dame staff is valuing him. And I think KJ Winston or Jaden Mangum, I think there's a pretty good chance that Notre Dame gets one of those 2 kids, and you'd be pretty happy for Notre Dame about that safety haul.
Yeah, and I hope you guys can keep track of all the names there. A lot to manage here with defensive back and what could be a big class. And again, a lot of guys who are coveted and highly ranked, who are inside the Rivals 250 or 4 stars, who Notre Dame is very much in the mix for and who like Notre Dame. So, yeah, a lot to unfold here. But yes, the future casts Mike put in should give you an idea of some of the more realistic, or most realistic at this point, possibilities. Let's go to offense.
That's defense. Man, I wish I had a glass of water right here. I almost considered we didn't do like an extreme deal of planning for this. Like, I was even thinking, like, maybe this can be one of these shows where I have a beer and I'm sipping on a beer, maybe a nice IPA for this one. But I decided I'm going to take a little sabbatical from beer because it's starting to add on some pounds. So, but I don't even have a water, Patrick. But I don't think the people care about that either way. So
it's just lack of preparation. They don't mind. It's the little things, But all right, let's go to offense. Why don't we start with tight end here? Notre Dame has 1 committed in Jack Nickel, the 3-star out of Georgia, but 2 recent offers. giving a pretty good hint that Notre Dame wants to take a second. I'll let you dish on those two and what might unfold or what you could see unfolding there.
Yeah, I think that's it's a good indication that they want a second tight end for sure, Patrick. Holden Stays, a 4-star tight end, 6'4", 230 pounds, from my backyard here in Atlanta. I've even seen him play. I went to see Westminster play Pace Academy, which is home of Notre Dame 2021 receiver signee Jade Thomas. And Stays, committed to Penn State at the time, was being double teamed right off the ball. Like, Pace Academy was pressing him with two guys, like, right off the ball. That it was very like Bill Belichick-ish. Like, all right, you're the best player on the offense. We're gonna take you away. I'll also add Pace Academy head coach Chris Slade played for Bill Belichick with the New England Patriots. So, interesting little tidbit there, but not to get too much off topic. This is certainly a name to know if you're the Fighting Irish. He hasn't been to campus. Hearing that might happen. Don't know when, but I think Texas is in the mix here. I know Alabama liked him a lot, and that with Sark over at Texas, they're certainly a school to keep an eye on. I know LSU is involved in this recruitment, but I think you might have to give the edge to Notre Dame right now in the recruitment of Holden Stays. The profile fit of academics and football and the tight end tradition, it's just a very strong fit for Stays in Notre Dame. And then the other new offer, Patrick, Eli Raritan, that last name's familiar. It should be, because his father Scott Jr. played at Notre Dame, what that be about 18 years ago or so. And then Scott Sr. was the strength and conditioning coach at Notre Dame when Notre Dame won a national championship under Lou Holtz in '88. So, I mean, I put a future cast pick in for Raritan. I think a couple days after he got the offer, it'd be pretty hard for me not to see Eli Raritan at Notre Dame. So, then what happens, right, Mike? It's like, all right, Mike, Notre Dame's got Jack Nickel committed. Can they take 3 tight ends? Like, because you feel great about Raritan and Stays. Like, I think it's a good problem to have for Notre Dame. I'm not 100% sure, what is going to unfold there, but that's not my job to figure out. That's Notre Dame's job. So we'll just kind of have to see. Christopher in our YouTube chat says Stays looks like Tommy Tremble. Hope he plays like him. From people I've spoken with, that's a similar comparison, and I believe that's something even Notre Dame has been pitching to the States as well. Both guys from the Atlanta area as well. So I think that's probably about it for tight end recruiting. One of the interesting storylines to keep an eye on, and one that I feel like if we enter June and Notre Dame doesn't like have its tight end class in 2022 figured out, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, you have 2 guys with high interest who, I mean, who knows? One of them kind of senses it's a race for a spot and decides to pop, kind of solves the problem itself for Notre Dame. But again, a good problem to have.
Right.
We've got some questions come up in the chat here about offensive line. So why don't we go there? And again, 2 spots already taken. Mike, how many do you see that are left, and who might be some of the best bets to fill those spots?
So for D-line, linebacker, and DBs, it's all been, 4 to maybe 5, and I lump in corners and safeties just because there's so many corners who are also playing safety and just these versatile guys. So I just kind of lump them together. Well, anyways, with offensive line, 4 to maybe 5 is also my projection here. So Notre Dame locked up Ty Chan and Joey Tanona early in the recruiting cycle. So Notre Dame is going to take at least 2 more, and the one guy that Notre Dame fans are probably super familiar with at this point is Billy Shrouth, from St. Mary Springs in Wisconsin. Had a Notre Dame FutureCast pick in for, quite some time, and still feeling good there. No reason to move off that one. I think that's about it. I still love Notre Dame. You would think, all right, if it's been 7-8 months or whatever, Mike, since you put in your pick and you felt really good that, I thought Notre Dame was going to get a commitment from him last summer. So, is he having second thoughts? Like, what's the deal? Notre Dame is still in the driver's seat in this recruitment, and I think he's just kind of been waiting until this dead period to lift. But it's not anytime soon. It's at least March 31st, or excuse me, May 31st until the dead period's going to lift at the very earliest. So I don't know. It could get pushed back more. So Shrouth is an interior guy. So if you're Notre Dame, you got to love a 1-2 punch if you sign Joey Tanoda and Billy Shrouth as your interior players. Tai Chan is definitely a tackle. And then from there, probably the X. So all right, so who are the other targets? Carson Hinsman is probably one of the more interesting players on the board, in my opinion. He's listed as a center by Rivals, and the number one at his position in the country, but I don't think, he's just a center. A lot of times when kids are listed as a center, that's all they're playing. But that's not the case for Carson Hinsman. He could play guard. I think even some schools have talked to him about tackle. So, if Notre Dame does land Shrouth, I don't think they want to take 3 interior players in this class, but Carson Hinsman might just be too damn good to pass up if you're Notre Dame. So he's an interesting one to keep an eye on. I know everyone in these live chats wants to talk about Zach Rice, number 3 offensive tackle in the class, 5-star prospect. Interesting one because Notre Dame's had some good contact here of late. Rice is kind of a tough cookie to crack. Like he just doesn't really talk to coaches. He's told me that many times. He's told other reporters that as well. Like he just really doesn't talk to coaches. I think he talks to reporters maybe more than coaches. I think he just just doesn't really enjoy doing all the Zoom calls and whatnot. He'd rather knock out a 5-minute interview. So Notre Dame is in the mix here. He's talked about, kind of knowing where he wanted to go. Maybe he doesn't anymore. I still don't see Notre Dame winning this recruitment, but, if you're going to take, a 5th offensive lineman or something late, Zach Rice would be an ideal land for Notre Dame. Joe Brunner's probably someone we don't talk about enough. 6'6", 305-pounder. Another guy in Wisconsin, just like Hinsman and Shrouth. Probably leaning Wisconsin. Ohio State's also in the mix. But Notre Dame, don't sleep on the Fighting Irish in this recruitment. Either 3 other offensive linemen to discuss. Tyler Buckner, recent offer by the Fighting Irish down in Bradenton, Florida IMG Academy, top 100 recruit. Personally, I don't see this one happening for Notre Dame, but worth and keeping an eye on, seeing how that one develops. And the last 2, very interesting recruitments here. And I could see either of these guys committing to Notre Dame. Who knows, potentially even both. Emil Wagner from Huber Heights, Ohio, Wayne High School. Same high school that Marcus Freeman and Mike Mickens both went to. Notre Dame is also recruiting Elijah Brown, a tight end from Wayne High School in the 2022 class. He committed to Alabama. The Irish are still very much in the mix for Wagner. This is a guy I'm like kind of considering a future cast pick in for. Feel like Notre Dame has got a very good chance here. Then Jake Taylor, Notre Dame fans are very familiar with. This is a guy who I have a future cast pick in for Notre Dame to land. But, I don't know, Patrick. I'm not as confident, I should say. When I put this one in, I believe it was in December, I was like, talking to folks close to him, it just seemed like a Notre Dame slam dunk, but the dead period, he has not been to Notre Dame, and it's kind of killing him, or killing Notre Dame in this recruitment. And he was able to go to Oklahoma, I believe it was in December, or November. And Oklahoma might be leading here. His final three is Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and Alabama. So, I could see him at any three of those schools. But so I'm kind of considering taking this future cast pick. You guys can hear it in my voice. I'm very wishy-washy here. I'm just not 100% sure. But look, the offensive line recruiting, it's as good. It's as good as it's going to get. Like they're recruiting at a very high level. Joey Tenona, Ty Chan, Billy Shrouth, and then, maybe, Joe Brunner or Emil Wagner, Jake Taylor, Tyler Buchner. I mean, these are all just no-brainer prospects. So, the fire Jeff Quinn crowd, you're going to have to wait another year because there's not much there for you right now.
Yeah, dead period giveth, dead period taketh away in a case like Jake Taylor. But let me let you catch your breath another minute here, Mike. We will move on to wide receiver, another one. I know a lot of you guys care about this, and for good reason. This is a wide open recruiting board. But if you had to kind of shrink it and give the people some names to know who you think Notre Dame is in a good position with or receptive to Notre Dame, some realistic targets of this, again, wide open bunch. Who you got?
Wide open. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of, popping up all these guys on a different tab so I can talk about each of them. There's just so many. I'm going to cover about 7 as quickly as I can. And remember, folks, if you're watching live, you want your question to be answered, definitely keep it about the position we're talking about, or drop a super chat. We're easily bought. I think probably the guy at or very near the top of the board is CJ Williams, borderline 5-star prospect per Rivals. 50 scholarship offers. I mean, he's got just about everybody under the sun after him: Alabama, LSU, Ohio State, Oregon, Stanford, everyone pretty much after him. I think Notre Dame is maybe running about 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th in this recruitment, which people probably aren't, that's not exciting them. But, I mean, this is the young man who was going to visit Notre Dame last April. And, of course, that visit got canceled due to the pandemic. So, he's just kind of, in contact with a bunch of different schools, and he still wants to visit Notre Dame. I feel like his recruitment will go the distance. So if he visits Notre Dame, all bets are off, and I could see Notre Dame pulling off the upset here. So, we got comments in YouTube saying can't see a modern day kid coming to the Midwest. I mean, Notre Dame's got to really build these, Los Angeles area Catholic pipelines. I mean, St. John Bosco, modern day. Get into school like Servite. I mean, these should be schools where Notre Dame is plucking kids out of. And if you build a modern day pipeline, I mean, now you're really cooking with gas. So CJ Williams worth mentioning, probably more on the side of a long shot, but could see Notre Dame picking up some steam. So something to keep an eye on. Staying in the Rivals 100, Tyler Morris. Another big name for Notre Dame. I think he's probably leaning Michigan right now, though. I know the Wolverines quarterback signee JJ McCarthy is very close with Morris. McCarthy was Morris's quarterback for a couple years at Nazareth Academy in Chicagoland. So, Morris has been on campus at Notre Dame several times. Still, I would put Notre Dame in Michigan, maybe as 1 and 2, with Michigan slightly in the lead right now. But this would be a great get for Notre Dame as a big time slot receiver. I think you could also throw him out in the field. Hang on, Patrick. There we go.
There we go. That's what's up. Brandon Plenser coming through in the clutch again with the super chat, and he asked any Andre Green Jr. or Tobias Merryweather updates.
Yeah, Andre Green. I mean, you see his rivals page here for our YouTube folks. 52 scholarship offers. This kid is a big time player. I'm so excited about him, and folks that I've talked to just rave about Andre Green. Don't have much of an update for you, Brandon, on Andre. Notre Dame's still plugging along in this recruitment. I think he's another one of these guys who is pushing things off until after the dead period. He's in no rush. And quite frankly, these kids with 50 offers, they have the ability to wait things out a little bit more. Tobias Merryweather, you mentioned. Notre Dame has done a really nice job in this recruitment. I think that when it's all said and done, I think there's a pretty good shot that he lands on Notre Dame's commitment list. Academics is such a big thing to him. Stanford might be tough to beat, though. They're much closer to home than Notre Dame is. But Merriweather has visited South Bend before. We did that, I want to say, back in November 2019. Keep mentioning that time frame. So that Notre Dame has that going for him. Hey, he made it all the way out here to campus, even when he didn't have an offer. So clearly he's highly interested in us. So Tobias Merriweather, I mean, look, Patrick mentioned this when we started talking about receivers. There's a lot of guys. It's a wide open board. This might be one of the guys that's like a top of the board guy that I also feel really good about where Notre Dame stands. And let's keep plugging along. Kaden Saunders is a big one. We've talked about him a lot at blueandgold.com and our YouTube page here. Committed to Penn State, but that's not stopping Notre Dame. It seems like consistent Zoom calls with him and Tommy Reese and Dell Alexander. Brian Kelly probably getting more involved here as things progress as well. So I feel like Notre Dame fans are kind of thinking that, if he decommits from Penn State, he's going to flip to us. But from what I'm told, there's a bunch of other schools in the mix. Alabama offered him not too long ago. Florida State's pushing for him. I think Oregon as well. So Kaden Saunders, still, a guy I could see ending up in Notre Dame's class. Let's see, 4 more guys to touch on before we move to running backs. Jarrell Williams from Saraland, and I believe it's the Mobile, Alabama area. I'll have a nugget on him for folks to read in Lucky Charms on blueandgold.com on Tuesday night. So a guy people don't talk about enough. I could see Notre Dame winning this recruitment. Xavier Bradshaw, a receiver who Notre Dame just offered today. His father was a running back for the Giants.
Yep.
Bluefield, Virginia, new name to know. Addison Copeland, recent Rutgers decommit. Notre Dame offered him, and since Notre Dame offered, he's landed Boston College, Penn State, and South Carolina offers. So this is a guy who's just kind of starting to blow up like Notre Dame in this recruitment early on. Amarion Walker from Louisiana, another big rangy outside receiver. Notre Dame has done a nice job in this recruitment as well, and I'll have an upcoming story on him at blueandgold.com. I think there was another couple receivers I wanted to talk about the rivals had listed as athletes. Maybe it was just Caleb Brown. And rivals 100 guy from Chicago. I personally don't think Caleb Brown is going to end up at Notre Dame, but the Irish are working on that one. I just think it's going to be like an Ohio State. I personally don't see him at Notre Dame.
Running back. Why don't we touch on that? Pretty clear that Notre Dame is going to grab 2 running backs in this class. Of course, it got one of them earlier last month in February in 4-star Jadarian Price out of Texas, as we talked about last week. Well, let's focus on that other spot, Mike. I know we touched on this a little bit last week, so some of you guys who are recurring listeners on either page are going to know most of these names, but nonetheless, why don't we run through some of those top targets here to be what would be Notre Dame's second running back in the class?
Yeah, I mean, you land Jadarian Price was a solid get for Notre Dame, and it's like for the second spot, you've got a chance to really sign an elite running back class to go along with Jadarian Price. If you really like Jadarian Price, like Notre Dame's second guy might be even better. And that's saying something. I think Nicholas Singleton is someone you got to keep right at the top of your mind. If you're a Notre Dame fan. Fighting Irish staff has been working hard on this one. Hold on, guys. Checking my phone real quick. You have no idea how many text messages I get that I can't, and Twitter notifications I have to check while we do these things. So Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State has pretty much been the top three, it seems, for Nicholas Singleton. Unofficially, I should say, for several months now. Alabama offered recently. See if the Crimson Tide can make an impact. But still, guys, I still see this as a 3-horse race between those those three schools. Singleton's a top of the board guy. Dallin Hayden from Memphis, Tennessee, another top of the board guy. Tennessee, Ohio State, Notre Dame battle. I think Oregon and Illinois maybe a little bit in there, but I see this race as a 3-horse race as well. Damari Alston, a guy I recently got to see in Atlanta, has been on campus. Guess when, Patrick?
November 2019.
I'm pretty stinking sure he visited for the Navy game in 2019 and then ended up getting an offer from the Irish several months later. A kid with just around 50 offers. It's a tough one to win, but Lance Taylor very much involved in this recruitment as well. Jabran Payne recently put Notre Dame in his top 5. With him being from Cincinnati, he has a prior relationship with Marcus Freeman, and Freeman is very much in contact with Payne. Gavin Sawchuk from Highlands Ranch, Colorado, Valor Christian, which is where Christian McCaffrey went to high school. Notre Dame in the mix is obviously there. Lance Taylor has the Christian McCaffrey connection, and they would absolutely love to add Gavin Sawchuk. So I think those are the biggest 5 names at running back to mention right now. There's a couple other guys at running back. Jordan Bryant James, Notre Dame recently offered. Zach Evans, maybe Dylan Tatum from the Detroit area. So these are all also names to mention as well.
Never gets old. Q Woodard asks, Kaden Saunders, does Notre Dame flip him?
I didn't put him in my mock class. If Notre Dame... Okay, if Saunders decommits from Penn State, like I said, there's still no guarantee that there's like some instant flip to Notre Dame. From what I've been told by folks on the Irish side of things, like Saunders and his family are like just perfect profile fits for Notre Dame. Like they're just gonna thrive. Like that, Kaden and that family being right alongside him just will thrive at Notre Dame and on the field. He's certainly a dynamic talent, and I loved his junior tape. So I think this one, maybe, I don't really do percentages. Maybe Notre Dame's got like a 35% chance. And I think that's really good. I think, that's me at the 3-point line, and I would bet on that. So, we'll see.
All right, Mike. I think we all know what the people are really waiting for here. You want to talk about quarterbacks?
No, we're cutting it. We're at right about an hour. We're not going to talk about quarterback.
All right. Well, let's
just kidding.
Let's just do it. Quarterback. Most recent developments there, I would say. Ty Simpson, the top 50 quarterback out of Martin, Tennessee, committing to Alabama. Notre Dame had offered. I think it had been trending toward Alabama or Clemson for a little while, as you had previously reported, and I believe even mentioned on here. But newest offer going out to Drew Alar, the quarterback out of Medina, Ohio. I'll let you touch on that if you want to, but I'm just take it where you want it with quarterback recruiting, because there's a lot that people want to know.
Fascinating. I'm just going to start by everyone in the comment section on YouTube here. It's like, does this guy have a committable offer? Do we want him? Like, would we rather have this guy? Or like, what if this guy commits here? Like, take a deep breath here. Like, Notre Dame does not have a quarterback right now because Notre Dame takes quarterback evaluations so extremely seriously. Like, in my opinion, if they wanted, like a Steve Angeli in their class last summer, I think that's where he would be right now. But I just have felt like they're like, yes, they offered 4 guys so far, but I still, even to maybe right around now, it's like, now I feel like now they're starting to really pick things up. Like, all right, let's go get a quarterback. But before, it just kind of felt like they're offering guys, but they really weren't pushing super hard for really anyone until after the football season. So that's been my read on it. Like, guys, I know that you can watch, like, you personally, Notre Dame fan, can watch like 3 seconds of a highlight tape and be like, I want that kid. Like, that's who we need to get. I know. I saw his offer list and his rivals ranking in 3 seconds of film. I know that's the guy. I know it. Like, if you're making 6-7 figures and you're Notre Dame coach, like, you've got to be a little bit better at your job than that. So they have really done a deep dive into, pretty much every top quarterback out there. So this is where they're at now. All 3 guys are still in the mix to be Notre Dame's quarterback. Drew Allar, Steve Angeli, Gavin Wimsatt. Drew Allar is the new shiny toy, and for good reason. He's picked up, I think it's like 14, 15 offers in the past 2 months. Of course, including Notre Dame. Under Armour All-American now. I feel like Notre Dame has a really good shot for Drew Allar to be the quarterback in the 2022 class. He visited February 1st of 2020. That was actually the last time Notre Dame had like a big junior day type visit weekend before the pandemic. He had a great time there. Notre Dame's been recruiting him a good bit in the past couple months, really ramping up since Notre Dame offered last Thursday. I think that they're going to push hard for Drew Allar, but Steve Angeli, the first guy that they offered in the 2022 class, someone who I just am baffled that folks are like, this kid's no good. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I've seen that. I'm like, I've seen him in person. Like, I got a ton of video. It's on our YouTube page. Like, here's what I saw. Like, you watch this and you tell me, like, if you're not impressed with him, seeing him in the practice setting in full pads. He's an impressive football player. I think he's like the modern day quarterback. Like, he sits in the pocket and throws the ball really well, and he's a big kid too. Like, he's listed at 6'2", 205. I think he's probably more 6'3", 215. Strong arm, runs well. Visited Notre Dame for the first time back in December for a self-guided tour. So I could see Notre Dame easily landing Steve Angeli. And then you have Gavin Wimsatt, the number 3 dual threat quarterback in the country, number 60 overall prospect. He's a young man from Kentucky, top player from his home state. I see this as Angeli or Allar. I think Wimsatt will end up at Kentucky. I think Wimsatt needs, in his mind, he needs to see Notre Dame before he can make a decision, and I don't think that he has anything planned to visit Notre Dame. So just kind of reading the tea leaves here, I think Wimsatt will end up probably staying in state at Kentucky. So Steve Angeli, Drew Allar, I think it's going to be one of those 2 guys, and we'll just have to see. I think if you're going to ask me which player do you think is better, Mike, I really like both. I'm not going to give you an answer. I don't really have one other than I really like them both. They're different. I think Angeli is the safer pick. I think Allar is going to be really, really good, or he's going to go in the college game and throw a bunch of picks, because his game is different. Like, he's playing in an empty set right now. He's throwing the ball probably 40 times a game. gunslinger mentality. So I really like both players. So that's about it on quarterback recruiting. Sorry, I was a little delayed there.
Always hits like a cold beer. All right. Well, Brandon, our best friend here, asks, can you explain a non-committable offer and how it's used? This is an interesting one. And, well, I mean, if you ask a lot of coaches, they'll say it's not real. But you talk to some of these kids and you figure out that, like, yeah, at some point, you can't. You hear of cases that, all right, someone tries to commit, you can't do it. But anyway, I'm just going to let you've covered this kind of stuff and encountered this a lot more than I have, just in terms of you dealing with recruits on a weekly basis and understanding this thing. So what do you think?
There are specific recruiting terms like official visit, unofficial visit, commitment, signee, like all these different things. Non-committable offers is kind of not one of those terms, but it sort of is. Like Notre Dame has offered, like 150 kids, in the 2022 class, or when it's all said and done, might be 300. I don't know. They can't take all of them. They only have, a limited number of spots. So, if you can only take 4 guys at a position and you get 4 and you're done, those other kids, sorry, if they call to commit, you don't have a scholarship spot for them anymore. Even the term scholarship offer is kind of a sketchy term because it can go away like that. Even the written offer that can go out August 1st of senior year, that's not binding. Like, none of these scholarship offers are binding. They're all just verbal. I mean, that's why some schools, can offer just they do offer so many kids, because there's the only thing really holding you to it is you just don't want bad PR. Like, if you drop a kid or a kid tries to commit and you say no, like that's the downside for these schools. So I think, does that answer that question, Patrick? I mean, it's tricky. I mean, but yeah, I mean, there's some circumstances where a school offers a kid, they really like them when they at the time of the offer, and then as time kind of goes on, and I'm not speaking specifically about Notre Dame here. This is just I've covered a lot of different schools. My tenure, covering football recruiting. Like someone will offer early, and then they fall out of love with the kid, and they don't really like his updated film or something. So, they kind of cool off. So that is my answer to that question.
Yeah, and basically it's kind of unavoidable because, all right, if you're taking, say, 22 kids in a class, you're not only sending out 22 offers because you're not going to get them all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it people you hear the term uncommittable offer or whatever, and people go up in arms. It's like, well, you shouldn't be doing that, or whatever. But sometimes it just happens where, like you said, some other guys commit first, and you have numbers, or mutually cooling on each other because, all right, the player didn't show interest, so the staff took the hint, or vice versa, or yeah, like you said, early offer. You see this every year because of a great camp showing or film in sophomore year, and then all right, doesn't quite progress as you think it would, and everybody just kind of moves on. So it just kind of happens. And I'll end with this, and that if you guys are all worried about oh, well, that offer wasn't committable, so they didn't beat out that school for this kid that my team just got, like, you're going to drive yourself insane. Just take the offer list for what it's worth. It's all one piece and part of the evaluation of how you're trying to judge these classes. Yeah. There's just so much that's, one, this isn't black and white, and two, a lot that goes on behind the scenes. It's just, we not only is not visible on, our homepage on blueandgold.com, it shows all the offers, but even stuff that, we don't know or we can't say and any of that. So
Preach,
yeah,
Patrick.
Opens up a big can of worms.
Preach. I'm done. That's all I got. I'm burnt out. Any super chats coming in? Comments?
We're good. And Yeah, you need a cough drop and then you need a beer. So why not let you go get to that?
Appreciate it, brother.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Pod Like a Champion. Again, if you're listening on the podcast format, subscribe to the podcast. If you're not already, leave us a rating, leave us a review. If you're watching on YouTube later on, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for a lot more content. Follow us on Twitter at Patrick Engel _ and at Rivals _ Singer. We will see you again next week. Until then, take care.